to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll open the public comment. Okay. Yes, sir?
Tim with Readout News, just a clarification, yesterday we had a question on the agenda, and there was a change between the one that was printed official from Michelle and the one that was on the website, and I maybe misspoke, saying I got it copied yesterday morning from the website, that I just copied the email version, which did not include the other issue that was on the website agenda. So they weren't quite coordinated, but that was what that was about. So the official, they were both official, but they were different. So with that said, I'll sit on my paper and be quiet.
Okay. Any other, okay, so we can move on. Let's see, Brooke, do you have,
Yeah, so they, my grant number changed, and so with that, they have to have a new signature page. And I have that if you want to look at the email, chain. But basically, so we kind of had some lack of communication. I was able to, on their website, able to go in and change the special assurances signature. They had, when I first got it, it was Franklin still on it, because when I had this was originated, Franklin was chairperson. And so, so then it took a little bit for me to understand that they were okay with me whiting out, like the signature page. The only thing that was available on the website to change it officially was a special conditions. So this one is black and white. Nope, not that one. One of them is. And the other ones are whited out for that reason, so let's see which one is it. Yeah, this signature page I was able to go in and change to your name. The rest of them, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't think I was trying to do anything by whiting something out. But that's where we finally, she was like, yeah, just white it out. Okay, I can do that. So that is the special assurances. This is just the signature page. And they just need that in order to start giving us money again, and which is a good thing. And
do we need a motion to sign?
Oh, sorry.
It probably is not a bad idea. I will move that you sign the updated grant information
Okay,
for the victim witness advocate, sorry.
motion's been made and seconded to assign a grant for victim assistant advocate restitution officer. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
And this one is just the civil rights one. Debbie had signed one of those as well.
So it was just the grant number that changed?
Yeah, because when they first had, when the RFP that was first, that we first got, it was kind of designated towards Marcy's law. Well, then they had to reword things, so then they had to change the grant number.
Oh,
So,
sure,
so then
okay.
with that, I had to do new signature pages, so. Took a little bit for, like, just have to change some things, but I'm going to do my quarterly and I was unable to do it, and so that was why. We should be hearing here soon about put in another proposed one. I hopefully will be hearing soon.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, and I'll make a copy of all this and get it to. Do you want to get it to Debbie or to?
I think to us,
Okay.
or to both, because she'll need it for the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thanks,
Sounds good.
Brooke.
Thank you very much.
I was upstairs, I thought, where's everybody at? Didn't think that we were down here. I'm sorry, you guys.
That's all
I
right.
was on the job, actually.
Okay, Jerry, we're ready for you.
All right, commissioners, thanks for having me down. So a couple weeks ago we met and we chatted about the growth policy update, the capital improvements plan update, and updating the floodplain regulations. And one of the things that I think we agreed on is we want as tight a scope and schedule as possible. So one of the things that I think we agreed to was just to chat in a little more detail about roles, responsibilities, expectations, points of contact, and that's why I'm down here. So I have, and these are just talking points from my perspective. So I'm a bullet point handout guy. It drives people crazy. The first thing I'm going to chat about is the capital improvements plan. So I won't hand this stuff out yet. So one of the things that is really important on the capital improvements plan is how involved you want the department heads or yourselves. One of the things that I handed out, this is kind of a template that we use for doing inventories and prioritization. And you can see as you flip through it, it's the front page is what I would call the overall priority list, which ultimately you as commissioners are going to put together because it's your decision about your top 10, top 20. But the following pages run the gamut from bridges, roads, parks and recreation, buildings, equipment. I even threw water and wastewater in there because we have a lot of counties that have water and sewer districts. We have counties that don't. So my questions are to you, and the rationale for this discussion again is there's $42,000, and what I want to provide you is a scope and schedule that can break out and say, of that 42,000, X is going to the CIP, X is going to the growth policy, X is going to the floodplain update. So that's really the rationale for this conversation. And having a sense from you about how you feel, who is going to do what on the county's end of things will help me. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So on the capital improvements plan, probably the three biggest things are, the first one is we need to get a hold of the most up-to-date planning documents you have, whether they're preliminary engineering reports that were done for Treasure State Endowment, for bridges, road stuff, any of that type of existing infrastructure planning documents you have. Boy, if we can get copies of those, that helps us. Again, some of it we have. Bob Church has done a lot of work for you on solid waste. That's one of the things that we've got a good handle on. But the other stuff will need help. We do have the previous capital improvements plan, but anything that the department heads can provide to us, that'd be great. And then to the best of their ability, if they can fill in these sheets, and I can get this to you as an Excel spreadsheet. It's all electronic. I just didn't want to. I figured a hard copy would work today, but I can email this. And essentially what we typically ask the department heads or even the commissioners is, look at their individual, their needs, whether it's the weed department, it's building maintenance. Buildings, for instance, the maintenance folks can say we need new windows. That's our number one priority. We think it's going to cost X. Any of that information you can give to us makes creating that update for the capital improvements plan so much more efficient. So does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So are you okay with that sort of approach, asking the department heads to do that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go.
Okay.
I think the more they're engaged, the more buy-in they'll have, and the better information we'll be able to get to you, and then they'll also be able to talk to the community.
Yeah.
I think also we discussed that could be a potential cost savings for us as well, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
The reality is the more that the county is, especially on the CIP, because CIPs versus growth policies, that can really be driven by the county. The more that the staff wants to take on, the less you're going to spend on the CIP. That's just the nature of the business. And that applies to growth policies and floodplains, but particularly CIPs, because your staff has the best understanding of their needs and issues. So who would you say is the primary point of contact for me to work with on the capital improvements plan? Do you have a sense? Is it one of you? Is it Nicole? Is it somebody else? It's just, we've got 3 different projects, and the public works director probably doesn't want to be involved too much in the growth policy and that sort of stuff. So do you have a preference for who would be the main point of contact for the CIP?
I'll make a suggestion, if it's okay with you guys. and I would say the guy who used to work in the road department, and also who's sitting on the rec board. I see this as both hard infrastructure, roads and bridges,
Sure.
and I also see it as marrying up with our recreation survey
Okay.
in the county, and all arrows point to Daryl, if that's good with you, Mike, and that's good with you, Daryl.
All these arrows at.
What did I sign up
They're
for?
not shooting though, they're just pointing.
I think that's the best way to go with roads, but I think with solid waste, you wanna go with Mary.
Right. And I can still help you there.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll be willing to do that.
that'd be great.
Thank you.
Perfect. I'm gonna put Daryl/Mary. The other thing that, just out of curiosity, is outreach. We're going to be doing an update of the growth policy and the CIP, and we already have a survey that's out there for the recreation plan, which is a separate process. But as far as public outreach, most residents don't get too excited about capital improvements plans. It's just not very exciting stuff unless the road, they're mad about a specific road or a bridge or something. And do you have a sense of how you would like to see public outreach take place on the CIP? The one thing I would recommend is we'll probably do a survey for the growth policy, and we could marry the CIP and the growth policy together, from a survey perspective. But do you feel like there needs to be an open house on the capital improvements plan, similar to what we would probably do with the growth policy? You probably do need to do, obviously you'll do a public hearing when you get to the point that you want to review and adopt the capital improvements plan. But do you have a sense of what you are comfortable with from an outreach perspective on the capital improvements plan? And again, I view that a bit differently than the growth policy, because frankly, CIPs, unless there's an overwhelming problem with infrastructure, you don't get a lot of people to show up for a capital improvements plan, open house, or hearing. Versus growth policy, because then you're getting into land use and subdivision regulations, and so I'm just curious if you have a sense of how you'd like to proceed.
I mean, what if we included that with a regular commission meeting, gave a period of time? Since you said people don't want to show up for a specific open house, we could still offer that comment period or whatever during one of our meetings. That way we could all field questions, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the plan will be available. We can put it on the draft plan, put it on the county website. We can have hard copies available, articles in the paper, obviously. It's just, again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. It's just my experience that people don't tend to show up for your traditional open house for a capital improvements plan, but you obviously need to give them the opportunity to weigh in, whether it's through survey, provide hard copies, online access, and then, maybe agenda it several times with the commission and say, we're taking comments, and then hold your hearing and adopt it. Does that make sense? I just want you comfortable with that approach.
I mean, as long as we're gonna be using a survey, I know that we're going to. Why not? It makes sense to include some of those questions in there
Okay.
that relate to that. I mean, on an agenda, or put on our agenda, in my mind, it seems like a pretty good way to go.
Okay.
It's inexpensive,
Right.
and folks have become quite comfortable emailing us
Oh, good.
or calling us, which having it on the agenda, I think, opens that door. The other thing I think we can do is reach out to our already organized groups. So we've got the TED community in Wheatland, we've got the Raidersburg community, we've got the Toston community, Crow Creek, got the Winston community, BCDC, Chamber of Commerce, MVM. We reach out to those guys. That, again, that's on us. It's very inexpensive. It's a phone call, it's a bump into each other on the street or an email, and they can talk to their groups too. So I think by doing that, we can get out to anyone who's interested. And I think we'll find, just like you said, Jerry, just like last time when we did the CIP, the people who were interested were there every meeting, and there were not a lot of them, maybe up to 20. is what we heard from overall.
Yeah, and that's normal. I mean, it's just, it's not glamorous stuff unless
Yeah.
you're the one driving through the giant pothole or the bridge is, gonna fail.
Yeah,
And again, thank you. This helps me put together, because I know what your expectations are of me as far as outreach. I know what I need to do, and I have a sense of what you're willing to do, so.
I think our solid waste is gonna continue to be a problem. If we're gonna end up with this growth that we're looking at, I think we're looking at probably a centrally located facility without any outstations. I think that would be the thing to do, is to have the solid waste board handle that and those meetings. Because they need to have in 5 years, these out waste sites they're gonna bury us.
Right.
And the transfer station up there is going to hell, our dump sites down here are going to hell. I mean, it's inevitable that stuff has to get done.
Okay.
And if we're looking at a 5 to 10 year program, then it's gonna be in that time frame.
Do you think, because that is a particular issue, do you think there is a need to do an open house on that, just that particular issue? Or maybe that's something to talk to the solid waste board about?
I would think that that's something that we should talk to the solid waste board, but I think that is something that they should, and Mary's handle that, they've just now gone through that, and there's gonna be another change coming.
Okay. Great. Can you think of anything else on the capital improvements plan? This is extremely helpful for me to put together a scope and schedule, so.
I can't.
No, I guess.
Okay. And again, I'll have this all laid out and for you to review, and if there's things you want to adjust, you'll have that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, if we have that guidance, that'll be a lot easier for us, so we won't have to guess
Yeah,
at the information that you're needing,
exactly.
so.
And vice versa. So expectations we're all on the same page. Okay, so next thing would be the growth policy. And again, this is just kind of a bullet point
Thank you.
sheet. I'm assuming Nicole would be the point of contact for the growth policy. That just makes sense.
Yeah.
And the one thing, and I haven't heard back from Nicole yet, I need to figure out, and I'm assuming she's here today.
She'll be here this afternoon. She's at the governor's conference in
Okay.
Butte. I
So
think it's over at noon.
I just need to chat with the biggest question I have on the growth policy is what level the planning board wants to engage in. And I haven't heard back from Nicole yet. I know she had chatted with them. Do they want to have regular meetings? Do they want Nicole and I, along with you, put together a draft? Give it to them to, review, tear apart, make recommendations to you and move on? That's a big question mark because we don't know how many meetings that will entail. As you probably know, the biggest thing is that under the law, the planning board has to hold a public hearing and make a recommendation to you. So at a minimum, that's what the planning board needs to do. And then the other question I would have, not only for Nicole and the planning board, but for yourselves is, what level of outreach do you want to do? Again, growth policies are always, can be controversial depending upon, what the planning board or commissioners or whoever are talking about. I would anticipate we would do a survey and probably combine that with the CIP, just people get survey fatigue, plus they're related, infrastructure and planning. Definitely at least one open house. We can post online versions of the draft document. We can print hard copies for folks to take a look at. But again, the biggest question I have is what level does the planning board want to be involved in? How many meetings do we want to hold for the public? And I don't have the answer to that, so I need to get that from Nicole, just so you know. So that's kind of a work in progress, but I'm assuming that we can get that hammered out this week because I want to get you something ASAP.
So a question that I have, that I'm kind of new at this, you guys can help me, as far as, we know right now that we have kind of a pretty big overhaul of our subdivision regulations, just items that we've talked about.
Mhm.
Is that gonna go through the planning board first, or are we gonna generate that stuff from the commission side? How does that work?
I think we also need to talk to Nicole about that, and I think it's probably the growth policy first, and then updating the regs. And I don't know beyond that.
Okay.
If the planning board is not interested, I think we need to drive that bus,
Okay.
because I think it needs to
As
be
long as we
done.
kinda know ahead of time who's, like it says, driving the bus, that's work towards that means.
Yeah,
We don't wanna the planning board to give them that task and then they fall short.
right. It would be good maybe to have a joint meeting with the planning board and Nicole over this, maybe
Okay.
next week. At least the chair,
Kinda give them an idea of what we're thinking
right,
and see how much they wanna.
yeah. Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
yeah,
And that's an important point, Daryl, is that, so your subdivision regulations have to be in conformance with your growth policy, meaning that, you know, if you're gonna, you know, do updated fire standards in your subdivision regulations that, you know, could be controversial, you definitely wanna make sure there's language in the growth policy supporting that, saying, we wanna do a better job of providing fire protection, you know, I'm just da 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 da. So yeah, first step would be growth policy, and then the question mark I would have is what do the current subdivision regulations say about the amendment process? Does the planning board have to be involved or not, and at what level? And the other thing I would throw out is you don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to subdivision regulations. There are several documents out there, and again, the legislatures it looks like they're gonna change the Subdivision and Plating Act, but nothing too major. But there are examples out there. Richland County at this point in time has one of the more up-to-date subdivision regulations in the state, and granted they deal with a few different things like oil and gas, but just the actual the guts, meaning that the basics. There are examples out there that you can use. You don't have to start from square one. And then there is also the model subdivision regulations at the Department of Commerce, which have been there for ever and ever. Maybe those will come out, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel at all.
Good, that was a point I was gonna make, is that hopefully there's
Yeah.
staffs out there, and from your own experience and stuff that you've done with other counties and
Yeah.
cities, that
It
can
may-
help guide us down that road a little bit.
Yeah, it could be a case of, you don't ever wanna, it happens all the time in the state, our small cities and towns, and sometimes counties will grab a set of subdivision regulations, they do a search and replace. You don't wanna do that, but it can be close to that, and then, you know, you just have to go through a good template and identify what doesn't work for you and what does, especially, I mean, the law is the law, and the steps that you have to follow when you review a subdivision are generally written in stone, but there's what we call the design and improvement standards, the one thing that the developers really care about, that costs money. You have a lot of flexibility in road standards, fire protection, and that sort of stuff, so, yeah, I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel, so. Okay, so I will chat more with Nicole, and it sounds like you'll chat with at least the chair of the planning board next week. The public outreach is probably the biggest question mark on the growth policy. I want to make sure that we're all comfortable with where we're going, because that's time consuming, you know. Drafting the document and doing research can be done relatively quickly, at least my experience, but meetings and surveys and that stuff can consume a lot of time, so. Any other thoughts on the growth policy?
how many public meetings do you think that we should have? And what I'm kind of wondering is, it would be nice not to do just in Townsend, but to go to Wheatland, maybe, within our budget, Winston, Raidersburg, Crow Creek, or just Wheatland and Townsend. How many do you think we need? And we could do them daytime or nighttime,
Nighttime is always better.
okay?
My gut tells me I would do probably 2 open houses. I wouldn't do any more than that. One, it's really hard to get folks to show up unless they are upset about something. I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken wheel. We're just finding this people's lives are just so complex and busy, and they're inundated with so much anymore. I think 2 well-advertised open houses, probably one here and one in Wheatland, would probably be adequate, and I could be wrong. I mean, that's, you know your county better than me. I'm just going from experience. Is if you provide folks the opportunity to either do an online or hard copy survey, we get some articles in the newspaper, including the IR for the folks on the north end who might not get the paper out of Townsend. So open houses, newspaper articles, a survey, and then just provide people a lot of time to review the draft document. I mean, again, you know your county better than me, so if I'm off base, you just have to say, no, we need to have 4 or 5 open houses. My concern is that you invest a lot of resources into open houses and 5 people show up. And while there's value in that, you're also operating under, you know, a limited budget. So you need to be very strategic about how you spend that money. You know that better than me. So is it worth $1,500 to organize, schedule, and hold an open house and have 3 or 4 people show up?
So let me ask this, so we're probably gonna put the survey out first, right?
Yeah.
So the response we get from the survey may drive what we think we need for public open house.
Could.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we don't get much of a response, then that might tell us their interest
Well,
level.
and
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, and the other thing is there anything controversial? There might not be anything controversial. Updating your subdivision regulations is required under the law. You know, what you put into some parts of it could be controversial, road construction standards, fire protection. It really depends upon if there are things that folks feel strongly about. You know, the TED, the potential development of the mine over the hill, that sort of stuff. That really, and that's something that's totally out of our control at this point in time. We just don't know what could come up. Unless in your own minds, you know, you can think of things that might be controversial, maybe there isn't. That's always the wild card. So I don't know if that was very helpful.
Well, yeah, I guess in my mind, what I think about is I watch, you know, the counties on each side of us and what they've had to gone through, and I see it starting to happen here. I want to be ahead of that train before, and not get left at the station. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. That being said, I don't think that you as commissioners or the planning board are going to propose anything that I would
Right.
call very, like Lewis and Clark County is probably going to look at zoning the whole Helena Valley. That's going to move forward. That's going to be controversial. That's not something you guys are talking about. You know, if you were talking about that sort of thing, we're going to have a lot of people at meetings. But that's not what you're talking about. So, you know, the TED, updating subregs, you know, how to address spillover development from the mine or the pumped hydro, you know, that can be controversial, but nothing like what Lewis and Clark County is gonna, you know, be dealing with.
You know,
So
speaking of the pumped hydro, I mean, you know, keeping an eye on that, what's going on, and I don't know if a lot of people know that, but, you know, Broadwater County is considered some potential sites for that in the future.
for residential development
No,
or
the
for
pumped hydro.
new pumped hydro, I didn't.
Yeah.
So that's stuff that we want to make sure, you know, to the best of the knowledge you have, we discuss that. Because then you get into issues of temporary workforce housing. It's not, you know, you have a big construction crew come in and boom, housing can really be impacted and those sorts of stuff. So, yeah. So growth policies, it really depends upon the issues that are being discussed. As to how much outreach you need to do. But again, you know the county better than me, and the planning board knows the county better than me. It's just, as it goes without saying, we don't have an unlimited budget for outreach, so. Yeah. Okay. The last thing, and I would assume the easiest thing is the update of the floodplain regulations. And this is just kind of a rough bullet point list of I mean, there's more that goes into this process than this, but I wanted to make sure that you were kind of comfortable with this general approach. Is that you'd use the state model, floodplain regulations. It complies with state and FEMA requirements, that you're not reinventing the wheel. Basically, you can pretty much do a search and replace in that document and insert Broadwater County into it. I guess what I would propose is doing that, provide you and Nicole and the floodplain administrator with a draft to look at, and if you're okay with it, send it off to DNRC and FEMA for their review. Schedule, you can schedule an open house, but the reality is those regulations, because of state law and administrative rules and FEMA's requirements, it's written in stone, so there's not a lot of latitude unless you want to be more strict, which I don't think that's what you want to do. You just want to meet the base requirements. So while you could do a lot of public outreach, you know, you can say these are the draft floodplain regulations, they're based on the state model. We don't have a whole lot that we can do about them. So doing a whole bunch of outreach you might not get a lot of bang for your buck just for the pure fact that they are what they are. But again, I defer to you, and that's just trying to get a sense of, are you okay with just having the regulations available for a month or two for review and questions? Or do you want to have an open house and a hearing? You will do a hearing for adoption, but just getting a sense of how you think you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, I don't think we want to get too creative or crazy on this. We're obligated by state law, by federal law. My thinking is, let's save our money for the growth policy and the CIP and do what we're required on this. We can do the public meetings here that we're already having, and we can use our website, which is free, and we can use the BCDC listserv. That's probably our best bang for the buck as far as communication.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably the best use of a resource from
Yeah.
that standpoint, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that helps me a lot. And again, if there was a lot of you had a lot of flexibility to adjust them. You can adjust them up, but that's not terribly popular. And you've got to enforce them if you're going to have really strict regulations. And floodplain regulations, as your floodplain administrator will tell you, they're tough enough to administrate as they are, let alone adding more layers to it. So, well, this helps me a lot. I feel a whole lot more comfortable stepping back and putting together a detailed scope of work and basically putting numbers to each of these and getting them to you. And I'll actually try to do that if I can. Big thing is I want to chat with Nicole and get a sense of what the planning board is thinking, because that's a big question mark in my mind. But other than that, I feel comfortable stepping back and starting to put together a scope. You have thoughts?
So are you our floodplain coordinator is Sean Higgy, right?
Yeah.
So you get most of your information for this floodplain through Sean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Are you gonna start wading into this right away then?
Yep.
How you plan?
I want to get you a scope, schedule, and numbers for each of these as soon as I can. We need to get going. We're burning daylight.
Yeah.
We're burning sunshine. Not that sun.
So-
What's your, this survey, are you gonna put this out like on a monkey survey or something like
Yeah.
that? And put it online?
Any surveys we do, there'll be an online link, and then you can create a PDF, and you can have the link PDF, so if folks want to print it out, or we can print hard copies. It's pretty straightforward. The hard part about any survey is marketing it. You've got to, you can create the best survey in the world, and if only 20 people look at it, it doesn't mean anything. So marketing the survey is critical, and anything you can do, the BCD listserv. There's only so much I can do on my end. I can create it, and I can monitor it and give you feedback about what we're getting. But marketing it is the hard part.
So we've been struggling with how to communicate with the whole community, the whole county. And one of the things we've come up with is that we did a newsletter, and to save money but still have a consistent communication with folks, we put together, a loose plan, we haven't adopted it yet, but to put out a postcard, EDDM, every month,
Nice.
and it goes to every single box holder in the county. That's a marketing tool we could use, and since it's going to be already part of our plan, or I think it will, that can actually be part of our budget and not cut into the 42,000. Or it can, I don't know how that would work, but that would be another thing to talk to Nicole about. She's the one designing and sending those out.
Okay.
What'd you call it, EDDM?
Yeah,
I remember us talking about that.
yeah. We haven't put anything in Plan Solid, and I think that's why we haven't got a postcard done yet. Plus with all the folding and taping and
Yeah.
stickers with the newsletter, I think Nicole needed a break.
I know that'd be a great way to do it. Surveys are great, it's just trying to get folks to,
Well, we can use that to drive them to the survey.
And they
If
could
they're
drive them to the
interested.
recreation survey as well. I mean, it could have multiple
yeah.
messages, even though it's just one 12 by 9. You know, it's still gonna have multiple messages,
Right.
yeah.
Anything else you can think of? Again, this helps me.
Oh, we have an update to the SEDS. We'll get that to you.
Yeah, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Anything we can dig up. One that does remind me, I did start doing a little bit of digging on the mine and the Gordon Butte project, and I can't. They're the EAs for them on their socioeconomic stuff. They don't talk a whole lot about the spillover impacts into Broadwater, Cascade, Gallatin, Park, and whatnot. So if you can think of any sources that might be out there that I'm not finding, that'd be great. So
Okay.
we just want to make sure we include that. But I just started looking, so.
We're actually gonna meet with the Tintina Mine folks next week.
Oh, good.
And actually talk to the Marr County commissioners and just kind of start opening that dialogue and find out what their thoughts are. And so maybe we'll get something from there that can help you out.
That would be great. Yeah, no, we want to make sure that discussion is in there. Again, even if it's, well, it probably won't be just short-term impacts. I mean, you'll have the construction crews, but then you're gonna have folks who do decide not to live in White Sulphur. They may go to Belt, they may come to Townsend, they could go to Livingston or Harlow, who knows, so. And we all know there's few families can make a big positive difference on a community, so.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, I will get out of your hair and get to work, so.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Jerry. And nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
So Gary, I'll get a little something from you on the CIP for Mary and I to start
Yeah,
working on.
yeah, what I'll do, Daryl, is I'll send you probably a little more detail than that, and I'll send you the electronic version of that.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, so we know exactly what you're thinking that we need to start looking for and include, okay?
yep, exactly,
Because there'll be things that we won't think of that
right.
you know you need, so.
And then the cover sheet you see there is really for you, ultimately, because you make the final decision about what the county's infrastructure priorities are. You'll take everybody, the weed department's got their stuff, road, bridge, Mary, but you're gonna put together the final list, so. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry.
Could you possibly include us in your email
Yeah.
of that stuff? That way we can kind of help keep people informed.
Absolutely. Please do.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay, so we will adjourn 8:59.